You read that title right. A 12-year-old dropped out of middle school so that he can pursue Fortnite full-time. And the craziest part, his parents are like totally on board with this. Now, there is a lot to the story, and honestly, some people might even agree with him and say that this is actually the right move for him to make. I'll explain why throughout this video, and trust me, there are surprisingly some genuinely solid arguments on both sides here. But to explain why that's the case, let's just start by talking about who this kid actually is and how he even made it to this point. His name is Taro. He's 12 years old when all of this happens, from Japan, and he has over 230,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now, normally when you hear about some kid who wants to drop out and go pro in gaming, you roll your eyes because, like, sure buddy, we've all won a few games in our time, but this kid, he's actually legit. Get this. He started playing video games when he was 3 years old. By the time he was just 5, he was hooked on Fortnite. And by his second year of elementary school, so we're talking like 7 or 8 years old here, his parents claim he was already beating pros. Like, what? At 5 years old, I was just learning the alphabet. Meanwhile, this kid's out here cranking 90s on professional players. Then at age 10, he hit rank 1 on the entire Asia solo leaderboard and 23rd globally in Fortnite's Unreal ranked tier. That's not just like pretty good for his age, that is genuinely elite. He's currently signed to an actual esports organization called Edge, and apparently a pro Fortnite player was once so impressed by him that he personally reached out to the family and told them he'd never seen anyone that young with that level of talent. That pro is apparently the one who encouraged Taro to start his own YouTube channel back in 2020. So that leads us to February 8th, 2025, when Taro posts on X announcing that after graduating elementary school, he will not be attending middle school. The post is obviously in Japanese, but it translates to, after graduating elementary school, I have decided not to attend middle school. This is the result of a year of discussions between my parents, myself, and my school, in order to create a lifestyle where I can seriously pursue both competitive Fortnite and YouTube while still ensuring enough time for sleep, exercise, and studying. Now, after he posted this, the internet absolutely lost it. His post reached over 35 million people, mostly in Japan, where he's popular, of course, and some people were genuinely hyping him up, saying things like, I know it's a unique path, but I think it's great. And another person said, you only live once, I'm rooting for you. But on the other hand, a lot more people did not see it this way. Like this guy said, think about what's more important, games or life. Then there's this person who said, if you're not smart enough to manage YouTube while still going to school, then you should actually study properly and go get a normal stable job. At this rate, if you don't go to school, you'll just end up becoming a YouTuber who teaches people what happens when you don't go to school. And honestly, as someone who is in college while making this video right now, I kind of agree. Now, speaking of education and taking bets on your future, let's talk about a really smart decision that a lot of people should be making: signing up for today's sponsor, Chime. So here's the thing, I used to just let my money sit in a regular savings account earning like basically nothing, we're talking pennies. But then I found out about Chime's high yield savings account, which earns up to 3.5% APY, which is over 8 times the national average savings rate. That means my money is literally growing while I sleep, while I edit, while I talk about 12-year-olds dropping out of school. Not to mention, Chime isn't just some random app. They're the #1 most loved banking app with millions of members, and your deposits are FDIC-insured through Chime's bank partners. There are no monthly fees and no minimum balance requirements, and they even have a roundup feature that automatically saves your spare change. Plus, you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early with direct deposit. So yeah, while Taro is betting his life on Fortnite, I'm out here letting my savings grow automatically, which is the smart thing to do. If you want to do the same, click the link in my description or scan the QR code on screen to get started, and right now you can get up to a $350 bonus with qualifying direct deposits. Now back to this kid, because honestly, Taro actually laid out his reasoning for dropping out, and honestly, it's not as dumb as you might think at first. He explained that if he went to middle school, he'd have only about 4 hours a day to practice Fortnite after classes. And according to him, 4 hours just is not enough to compete at the highest level. When he was interviewed by a Japanese news outlet, he said, the top tournament players are all stronger than me. They keep getting better by playing every day. After watching them catch up to me and pass me, I realized I couldn't keep up until I was practicing 10 hours a day. Which, I understand that, but at the same time, none of the top Fortnite players players are 12 years old. You have time. And his dad went even harder in the same interview, where he said traditional athletes train about 5 hours a day, but in gaming, players can train for 13 to 14 hours. Top contenders on the Asia server usually practice 10 to 12 hours daily, and they have done that consistently for 5 or 6 years. If he had to go to school every day, he would be exhausted after class. And this part is just insane to me, because I don't think I've ever heard of a parent who actually wants their child to play video games for 14 hours in a day. I mean, this has to be so unhealthy for everyone involved, no matter how old you are. Now, before you write off his parents as completely delusional idiots, here's where things get really interesting. The parents aren't uneducated people at all. Taro's dad graduated from Tokyo University's law school, which is basically like the Harvard of Japan. The family used to live in a tower apartment in one of Tokyo's best neighborhoods before moving to a smaller town. So we're talking about highly educated, wealthy parents who discussed this decision with Taro for an entire year before going public with it. They claim he still sleeps 10 hours a day, exercises regularly, and continues studying privately. His parents say they're basing his studies on his interests, as they doubt that what's taught in middle schools currently is really useful in this day and age. I guess it's just unclear what that actually looks like, especially if he's spending 10 hours a day gaming. There's only so much time in a day, you know? But honestly, I do kind of get where they're coming from. A lot of what schools teach nowadays is pretty irrelevant. But here's where the dad's logic does start to get a little concerning, and this is insane, because to prove how talented and focused his son is, the dad told this story in an interview. Now, when translated to English, he essentially said this: "What really made me think wow was when he was in 2nd grade and played for 28 hours straight. He started at 10 a.m., was still playing when I went to bed, and when I woke up, he was still playing. So I thought, this kid is incredible. Because it was during COVID and there was no school, I figured it was okay once in a while and didn't stop him. And he just kept going until 2 p.m. the next day. He even forgot to go to the bathroom and ended up peeing a little." The dad told this story proudly, like this was evidence of his son's exceptional concentration. Sir, your 7-year-old just wet himself because he couldn't stop playing Fortnite for over a day. That is so concerning. Why are you happy about that? Maybe things just got lost in translation here, but based on my research, and I took a lot of time researching this stuff, it seems like he was genuinely proud about this. Now anyways, let's talk about the legal situation here, because this is where things get complicated, since it's actually technically illegal for him to be doing this. In Japan, education is compulsory through middle school. That's 9 years total, meaning you legally have to go. There's also no formal homeschooling system. No way to just opt out and say, I'm done. So technically speaking here, Taro's parents aren't allowed to be doing this legally. In practice, Japan rarely prosecutes parents for something like this, but obviously in a place like Japan, the social consequences are massive. Japan values education and conformity like crazy, so doing something like this and dropping out of middle school to play video games is basically unheard of. Some people pointed out that Taro isn't technically the first kid to do this. The last documented case of this that I could find was in 2019, when a YouTuber named Yutabon went viral for quitting school in 3rd grade to become a full-time content creator. But as of 2024, Yutabon has since gone back to school, so make of that what you will. Now, let's get into the real question everyone's thinking. Is this actually a smart move? Like, forget the moral debate for a second. Purely from a strategic standpoint, considering this kid's position in life, does this make sense? And look, I'm not going to pretend esports isn't legitimate. The 2019 Fortnite World Cup had a $30 million prize pool. At age 16, we all remember when Booga won $3 million playing Fortnite. Right now in 2026, Fortnite is back at the Esports World Cup with a $2.5 million Reload Elite series. Not to mention, Japan's gaming market alone generated over $24 billion in 2025. So yeah, obviously there's real money here, but here's what Taro and his parents might not fully be considering. The average esports career lasts only 4 to 5 years. Most pro gamers retire by their mid-20s, which is really surprising when you think about it. The burnout rate is actually absolutely brutal, because these players are grinding 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week for years. That is not healthy. According to a 2020 study, only about 1 in 5 esports careers last longer than 2 years. That is it. Most players never make it big. They practice for years, sacrifice everything, and then nothing. So my thoughts are, what happens if none of this works out? Like, really think about this here. Let's say Taro grinds for the next 6 or 7 years and it just doesn't pan out. Now he's 19 or 20 years old with no high school diploma, no traditional education, no work experience, and honestly, in my opinion, the worst part, probably underdeveloped social skills, because he spent his entire adolescence grinding Fortnite instead of, being a teenager. And an esports, even if you're really successful, this career is very short. So best case scenario, he's maybe 25 when he retires, still young, sure, but now he has to actually enter the real world for the first time with zero preparation. Now, I guess you do also have to think about the fact that Taro has wealthy, highly educated parents with resources and connections, so if this does fail, they might be able to probably figure something out. But for any normal kid, if they see this and think they can do the same, this would be catastrophic. Now, let me try to show the other side here, because there are some legitimate arguments in Taro's favor. When you think about it, we don't criticize parents who let their kids pursue professional sports at young ages. Tennis prodigies, gymnasts, figure skaters. These kids often have really weird educational paths because their training demands are so intense, and nobody really bats an eye at that. Taro has legitimate, verifiable skill just like these athletes. He's ranked globally, he's signed to a real organization, and he has a YouTube following that could sustain him through content creation, even if the competitive stuff doesn't work out. And his parents are far from idiots. They seem to be extremely smart and spent a year discussing this with his school before making the decision. They've obviously thought about this more than the average I'm gonna drop out and stream kind of kid. And to be fair, according to view stats, this guy Taro's YouTube revenue in the past year isn't too bad. It's anything from $9,000 to $22,000, which is not terrible for a 12-year-old if he can bring that number up as he gets older. So maybe this isn't actually as crazy as it sounds. But then I remember that his dad bragged about his 7-year-old wetting himself during a 28-hour gaming session as evidence of his talent, and I think, okay, maybe it is as crazy as it sounds. Honestly, at the end of the day, I genuinely don't know how to feel about something like this. Part of me wants to clown on it because, I mean, come on. A 12-year-old dropping out of school to pursue Fortnite is objectively hilarious. But another part of me recognizes that the world is changing. Esports is legitimate. Content creation is a real career path. The education system is a bit outdated. And maybe this kid and his extremely educated parents know something that the rest of us don't. Or maybe in 5 years we'll be making a Where Are They Now video about Taro and it won't be pretty. We genuinely don't know.